Thank you so much for joining us for NAMI Maryland's 39th Annual Conference. My name is Demetrius Upshaw, and I am a volunteer with NAMI Maryland. I will be your moderator for this session today. This workshop session is College Success for Students with Mental Illness, presented by Scot Marken from EdRedefined and Eli Marken. You can read more about our amazing presenters, including their full bios in the digital conference program on the official conference website. The mental health landscape at colleges is rapidly changing. Come learn from an independent educational consultant who exclusively supports students with mental health issues and disabilities about trends, the college search, and the application process, accommodations for mental illness, and ideas to enhance student success outside of the classroom. Participants will also hear from a current college student with mental illness and how he is navigating college and his growing independence. If this is not the workshop you meant to attend, please click the back button on your browser or click the conference drop down on the left-hand side of your screen and select sessions from the menu to return to the full list of workshops we have available. We will be addressing questions at the end of the presentation. If you have any questions as the presentation continues, please post them to the social wall on the right-hand side of your screen. We will be reviewing questions as they come in, and if something in particular is unclear or needs to be expanded, we will ask our presenter after the presentation has concluded. If you have any comments, concerns, or technical issues, please post them to our social wall and our technical assistant will address them accordingly. When posting on the social wall, please be aware that there is a 20 to 30-second delay between the presentation and the stream on Conference Tracker. When this workshop session closes, you will be prompted to fill out a brief survey. If you would like to receive CEUs for this workshop, you must complete this survey in order to qualify. I'd now like to welcome our presenter for today's workshop, Scot Marken and Eli Marken. Scot is the founder and CEO of EdRedefined. Thank you so much for joining us today. Scot.
Thanks so much, Demetrius. It really is a pleasure to be here. And this workshop is actually really special to me. I do actually a lot of talking on this topic around the country. And today's the first day I've ever gotten to present with my son. So I'm really excited and very proud of him. So I wanted to start out by just getting a sense of who's in the audience. So if you could post on the social wall, and you could have certainly more than one identity here, but whether you're a student, you're a family member, you're a mental health professional, or how else you may be connected to the conference. And then Camille from NAMI will go ahead and give us a sense of who's here. So if we could take a couple of seconds to go ahead and do that. And I'll wait for about 5 seconds. Perfect. And if you missed it, you can put it in at any time. Okay. So I'm also going to go ahead, if you can go ahead, it would be really helpful to us as presenters to go ahead and, let us know how you feel your knowledge is on the topic, of the college search process and college for students with mental health issues. Let us know if you have very limited knowledge all the way up to you could be giving this workshop. And, we'd love to know the people who are going to give this workshop in case anything, happens with technology on my end, jokingly, you can go ahead and give the workshop. So let me go ahead and tell you what we're going to talk about today. We only have an hour and we could probably spend, the 2 days like the conference on any one of these topics. So today there'll be a lot of an overview and hopefully get people thinking and give you some resources that you can go ahead and use. Great, I just saw from Camille, we have a lot of mental health advocates here. So super excited about that. So I'm gonna just start and talk a little bit about the impact of COVID on mental health. I don't think that, based on where we are right now, that we cannot talk about that, but it's just be really the context of, moving on from there. I'm then gonna talk about the idea of college readiness for students, how you would conduct the college search process and applications, and have the lens of, looking at students who have mental health challenges. I'm then going to talk about accommodations that you can receive and ways to go ahead and find mental health support and the type of support. And then we're going to go ahead, Eli and I are going to have a conversation that we've called a college story with numerous chapters, because, you know, it has not ended yet. And there are some highs and lows, and like a lot of chapters, I would say that this one is, Eli, if you agree with me, somewhat of a exciting suspense book. Would you agree with that?
It's definitely different.
Definitely different than you thought, right? But lots of positive things happening. And then, you know, we're really going to try to go ahead and have some time for questions and answers. So Eli, for this part, oh no, stay on for this part, okay? Because you'll do your bio. So just a little bit about me. I have more than 20 years supporting individuals with disabilities on a professional level and on a personal level. I'm currently the CEO of a national educational consulting firm called EdRedefined that I'll explain about in a minute to give you some more context for today. And I come to my work actually as a nonprofit CEO for more than 25 years. And the last 10 years or so was focused on developmental disabilities and mental health organizations. And that was in the Washington, D.C. region. And I had the privilege and pleasure of working a lot with NAMI Montgomery County. If anyone is here from there, a shout out to you. Prior to my work as the CEO of some nonprofit organizations related, but I have been a grant maker on the giving out money side for behavioral health issues. And I like to say, and it's something that's been my own journey, that I probably would not have said several years ago, that I'm an individual with anxiety. And I think it's super important to go ahead and, you know, continually have that conversation and education, and it's just sort of a part of who I am, and obviously particularly in this conference. And I'm really proud you're getting to meet one of my children today. And I do have two current college students, and they both receive accommodations, including for mental health issues. So, oops, went the wrong way. A little bit just more about me, again, in terms of giving you some context of, you know, why I'm talking today. I am a member of the largest college consulting association called IECA, and I am one of 10 people nationally that's on National Learning Disabilities and Neurodiversity Committee. I am involved with something called the College Autism Summit. If you have not heard of that, a national summit that's taking place at the end of the month. And that I also, you know, have been involved actually with NAMI for many years. I'm involved with the Autism Society, CHAD, related to ADHD, and the Learning Disabilities Association. And I believe really strongly in professional development. And, you know, every week you will see me taking workshops. You know, I'm not a clinician, although I do have experience, you know, working at, you know, several organizations with the mental health mission, but I frequently actually do participate in CE classes to go ahead and continually improve my skills, as well as classes related to higher education. Just very quickly about my firm is that I am based in Montgomery County, though the work is national, and exclusively support students with mental health issues, autism, ADHD, and learning differences. I do college readiness, help with the applications, all the way through after the acceptance, going ahead and working on accommodations, transition, and then providing actually independent living coaching, non-academic, for students at school. And I would say that all of the students that I work with have mental health issues, either it's their primary diagnosis or it is a co-occurring issue. So that's a bit about me. And Eli, we're going to switch right now if you want to go ahead and, you know, let everyone know a couple of things about yourself.
Hello, everyone. My name's Eli. I am 21 years old. I'm a second year of college student at Westchester. My path to college is non-traditional. As it says, I went to boarding schools. I'm living off campus. I have living off campus in a house. In Westchester, there's the dorms. Most people live off campus, but there's the house and there's the dorms, and then there's house off-campus housing in the borough. And I'm living in a great location with five amazing roommates. That can ask you better understanding of my disabilities.
Great. And Eli, do you have a major?
Oh, I'm undecided.
Okay, but you've taken some interesting classes.
I want to call them interesting. I'll call them requirements.
Okay.
For I didn't actually realize they were requirements for the business degree, business management, which I hope to go into.
Perfect. All right, thanks.
No problem.
And Eli, it's probably a good time to go ahead, I'd say, and mute yourself and put you, turn your video off until we come back to the other section. Great. So I first want to go ahead in terms of setting the context that the source of this is actually NAMI, that 50% of all lifetime mental illness begins by age 14 and 75% by age 24. So individuals that we're talking about today, whether they're teens in high school looking at college, they are individuals who are in college, they're young adults who have been maybe working, haven't gone to college. For many of them, they may have a mental illness, or it could happen while they're in college. It could happen in the summer when it first can go ahead and present. So that's important in terms of thinking about what someone may need. I'm sorry, let me go back to that. And also I do want to point out that very tragically, suicide is the second leading cause of death for college students. And something that obviously really has to be taken seriously. And I'm glad to see more work is continually being done on college campuses and nationally. So I do want to just start quickly about COVID because we are still in the pandemic. There's been lots of changes that have been occurring, but COVID has had a tremendous impact on high school and college students. This is something actually that I do speak a lot about. I have in over the past year. And I've broken it down into, about students overall, and then looking specifically at college and high school students. As we all probably know, and we've experienced firsthand, or definitely know someone, the vast majority of students have had mental distress while they've been at college related to COVID. And for individuals who have a lifelong mental illness, that has been heightened. And there really has been a tremendous impact. For all students, and of course, it varies per individual, but people have gone through anxiety, depression, grief. I had read some statistics, I think this was kind of old, about March, but more than 4 million people in this country have been affected by directly knowing somebody who tragically passed away from COVID. There's been financial hardships on families and how that impacts college. Obviously, we know, sadly, there's been a lot of social isolation, days just seeming to be like, is today Tuesday? Oh, no, it's Thursday, because a lot is happening the same. And yet at the same time, particularly for students, there's been a need to be flexible as the teaching methods keep changing and school policies keep changing, some on their own and some related to government changes, as well as how schools handle outbreaks at school. So specific to college students, I just want to bring up a couple of things, is that there are differences that we're seeing related to where somebody is in college. When you think about juniors and seniors, they experienced college pre-pandemic. So they have known what it's like to be on that campus, whether they are a commuter student, whether they live there, they've had established social relationships, involved in clubs, a whole variety of things. And now, there has been a lot of challenges in how they learn. For individuals who are not living at home, many of them, had to live at home, go live at home, quickly in the middle of a semester, and yet they're still paying for an off-campus apartment. I've seen a lot in Westchester, where Eli's at, where where parents are posting frequently, does anybody want to sublet? Because of the financial pressures that they went ahead and, last year they rented an apartment and they couldn't use it. And really a lot of loss of independence. That's a big thing for students who are starting out in college, and they increase their independence, as they get older. So for juniors and seniors, I think that loss of independence has been the hardest on their mental health. For sophomores, they had dreams like Eli of starting college, and it didn't meet the reality of what COVID brought. So for many students, it's actually their first time on college campuses this fall. And that as a result, colleges are actually developing programs and orientations for sophomores as if they were freshmen, because all of the challenges with transition and starting at college is something that sophomores are experiencing. And for freshmen who have just started, I think there's a lot of fear and anxiety around the fact that for the past year and a half, in most cases, their high school work was not necessarily particularly rigorous. Perhaps the first semester that we went into quarantine for schools, I mean, quarantine at home, and schools, quickly went to virtual, and some did a great job, particularly some smaller schools that maybe had some more flexibility, and some large school systems may have been harder. Of course, it varies depending on the school system. So I think that a lot of freshmen are now worried of, do they have the academics that they need to be successful to go ahead and jump to the next level of college courses. And then also, right, they're early on in their transition. The first year is the one that is the most challenging for a lot of freshmen and on their mental health. And they're still figuring it out the way everyone has historically, but now they have on top of it, what is happening with COVID? Are they wearing masks? Are they able to go to the dining hall? I'm hearing that there are some colleges, there's lines for 2 hours to 3 hours in order to go get your food because of the standards and procedures. And so, that causes challenge for people. So there's a lot of things that, COVID is impacting. For high school students, because the majority of the rest of this is going to be focused on applying to college and then talking about Eli's story, is they've obviously had their own changes and challenges. And when they're applying to college now and starting, or some have already applied, they're very concerned and worried because in most cases, they don't have that many traditional extracurricular activities. It stopped when they were in 10th grade in the spring, and then for all of 11th grade. And some students may have, some may not have. Some just the schools didn't have, and others, they needed to go ahead and spend more time as part of their family responsibilities, whether it was taking care or is taking care of a younger sibling while the parent is working. They're also very concerned about getting letters of recommendation. Traditionally, you get letters of recommendation from your junior year teachers, maybe your first semester, senior year, but typically junior. And, if most people think about it, like Eli is and Camille is now, they're on this webinar, but I can't see them. I don't really know to what degree that they're paying attention to the class. And so there's definitely not a connection that occurred between a lot of teachers and their students. So it's very difficult for students to ask for recommendations, as well as it's difficult for teachers to go ahead and write them. And the other thing is that, all the college data that's been around historically that informs a lot of choices for making decisions about college, whether what the GPA is, whether the type of classes that people have taken, their summer activities, taking the SAT, ACT, that's all been upended. And so as a result, data never comes as fast as you'd like it. It's not typically current. So in many ways, the high school seniors are applying now with less information about how to strategically think about their college admissions than people from a couple of years ago. And so as you can imagine, that is causing them a lot of stress and anxiety. So, okay, moving on to that. So just want to give you a sense of how I approach as a consultant the college process. So one of the biggest things is, to understand, and I think everyone who is here, would agree with me that mental wellness is a journey. It is not a destination, and that there are ups and downs in people's lives, and that that is something that people may experience when they're in college. We may talk about challenges today for people who would have mental illness, but I really want to point out that obviously people with mental illness, which is more than 1 in 5 people, have been extremely successful in college, and many more can be even more successful with the right support, with the right treatment. This generation is definitely more open to talking about and addressing their mental health issues than previous generations. And so that really, I think, is making a big difference in how mental health is being addressed. And it's important to know that as stigma is still real. Stigma is still real, and we need to go ahead and find ways to address that. But we also need to go ahead and think individually at what point maybe we want to go ahead and divulge, or we may not want to go ahead and divulge, such as my saying, earlier on that a couple of years ago, I would not have put in a presentation that I have anxiety. So here's the college process steps that are done in really a linear way. Now, it does not have to be linear, but I've numbered these because I'm discussing it in a linear way. So before starting out and saying where I'm going to apply, you need to go ahead and understand what's the student's interests and what's their preference. I'm actually specifically saying students because initially starting out, a lot of times a lot is related to the parents' interests and the parents' preferences. But that does, need to go ahead and eventually change because the student needs to own the process in order to go ahead and really figure out what's the best fit and start to show that they have the independence and they have the life skills and the academic skills to go ahead and, move forward and be successful in college. So before you look at college, specific colleges, I encourage people to think about the supports that they need, whether it's direct mental health support, it's academic support, it's social emotional support. So while, NAMI is an organization, right, the MI stands for, keep hitting that, mental illness. Oops, I'm sorry, I'm back now. While it's mental illness, for many people in college, it may not be, the mental illness may not be their primary diagnosis. As I'm sure people here, many of you know, that there is a very high correlation for students who have learning disabilities and students who are on the autism spectrum with mental health issues, most notably depression and anxiety. And so it's important to think about what are you looking for, where do you think you'll need help to best support you. And then, this is something, Eli, I'm not sure if you want to go ahead and, put in here, I'm having a bit of a smile with my parent hat on, is that, there needs to be a discussion between the student and the parents or whoever is paying around any family parameters. And as you can imagine, that may go really well, or there may be some, challenges and pushback about that. Whether, parents may say that they don't want their child to go all the way across the country. They think that's too far. The student may totally feel that too, right? And that obviously has to be, shared. And, I'm sure mental health advocates are here would 100% agree with that. But families do need to go ahead and set some parameters so that the student does understand, if there are financial limits. I really think that you need to go ahead and go through that process first, as opposed to, having someone just apply with no sense of whether you can afford it or not as a family, and getting somebody really excited about going, and then, to find out, no, we can't afford to go there. So there are things that you can do to go ahead and get a sense of what it would cost. I also would look at the support that is provided, not just at the college, but outside of the school. Many individuals are going to need wraparound support that is not going to be offered directly by the school, so that you should do some research around that and then create an initial list. Okay, some people just jump right in and they go look at, what schools match up with my GPA and what schools match up with my major. And while that is really important to do, I think particularly for individuals who have mental health challenges or have other disabilities, that they need to understand where the support is that they can use that would be helpful for them, how easily accessible it is in developing their initial college list. And I really think that it's super important to think about what is the overall fit. It's not, and it shouldn't be, what is just the best school that I can get into academically. Because you might be able to get into a school academically, but if it's a pressure cooker and it's in an urban environment and you don't think that you would be comfortable in that environment, it's not going to likely be a good school for you. So you really have a lot of things to think about. So once you create the initial list, I suggest that you go ahead and then refine the list. You can go ahead and do virtual tours. You don't have to go ahead and visit, particularly at this stage. And the virtual tours, you can do a formal tour on a college campus, but I also really like to encourage people to go to places like YouTube and go ahead and look up like a day in the life of at particular schools. And then you go through the application process. We can go ahead and spend a lot of time on this, and we don't have that time today. So I just want to go ahead and say a couple of things that people always ask, and this might come up some questions, is, do I need to disclose my disability? Are people going to know that I have mental health challenges? And is that negatively going to impact me, in getting into college? And so the resounding answer is that schools are not allowed to ask about disabilities in relation to admissions, and that 100% you do not need to disclose if you do not want to. The process of applying to college runs parallel to getting accommodations and support, but they're two different departments, and you can and should speak to the disability services, to the counseling center as part of your investigation and your research into a school, but you do not need to disclose. With that said, you may want to disclose. And some reasons for that are that perhaps you're an individual with depression and you had a major depressive episode your second semester of, sophomore year, when everything happens with COVID and we retreated into our homes. And the rest of the time in high school, you have all A's, but you have a lot of C's and a couple of D's and an F during that period of time. So disclosing may allow you to go ahead and explain holes in an application. Okay, that I just did not do well that particular semester, or impact on some extracurricular activities that you did, or a variety of things if you think about people's lives, their lives, and how mental health affects that, obviously on a very individual journey. And then you could decide whether you want to apply or not. And if you do decide to go ahead and apply, there are different places that you can go ahead and apply. If you do decide to disclose, there are different places related to an application that you can choose to do it. Sometimes people write their main essay about it, or they think that's how they have to disclose, but 100% you do not need to go do that. And that writing the essay related to a mental health issue may be appropriate, or it may not be appropriate for the essay of what you want to go ahead and write. But you can go ahead and put it, there's an additional information section. You can go ahead and not write a whole essay, but you can go ahead and put in information that shows that it's just a part of who you are, that you have anxiety, that you're overcoming a challenge, and your anxiety made it even more difficult. I have several students I'm working with, and they do want to disclose because it's important to them about their mental health issues. And the way they're choosing it is not this big reveal. It's just sort of, overall a part of who they are. So with all that work, you then will receive your college decisions, and there will be hopefully really positive emotions, joy and excitement that you've gotten into places. But there, likely will be some disappointments. There'll be frustration. And if you're put on a wait list, you're deferred. If you apply early and you're deferred to regular dismission, there's still a lot of anxiety and the hope at the same time. So, it's important to understand and acknowledge that people are going to really go through a lot of emotions as part of this. Okay, so looking further, ahead. So now you've been accepted. So what happens next? So at that point, I think is the time when you really need to go ahead and delve deep into ensure that this school that you think you would like to attend can meet your needs, or meet your child's needs, or meet the needs, if you're a mental health provider, of your clients. So I would set up a meeting with disability accessibility services, perhaps set up a meeting with the counseling center, sometimes, challenging to do based on the fact that they're typically very understaffed and have a lot of work to do. And there's particular times that may be easier than others in order to go ahead and speak to them. And right around finals or midterms, is probably not when somebody may be able to talk to you in the counseling center. So I would then go ahead and compare your acceptances, and I think it might actually be Demetrius on some sort of a timer, as opposed to, that's why it's moving forward. I'm not actually pressing it, but I'll be aware, continue to be aware of that. So I'd compare the acceptances and see what you think the school offers, and financial aid and merit scholarships. Now, obviously, we can spend hours on financial aid and merit scholarships. I will tell you at the end that I am actually doing a free national workshop related to understanding costs associated with going to college for individuals with disabilities and how to pay for them. And I'll give a shout out, or perhaps Camille, you can put in the chat. I'm actually doing a workshop on that on November 11th. And that is with an organization I'm partnering with called the College Funding Coach.org, the College Funding Coach.org. So all about financial aid and scholarships. I will just say right now that there definitely is the ability to appeal financial aid and scholarships. Often for students with mental health challenges, other disabilities, the cost to attend are higher. An example might be, the frequency by which you're going to see your therapist. There's a lot of, transition that's happening. So whether it is something that you're doing towards the beginning of school, or it's something you feel that you need in order to, be successful throughout the year, that's an additional cost for you. An additional cost might be, whether you have a coach, whether there's other type of things that you may need related to your living arrangements. A single could be a great example. Many people are looking for a single, and it costs more money. So the school is not just going to give it to you, but you can try to make the case that your cost to attend is higher than other students. Okay, after committing, and that date to commit, if we think about a year, for students that apply regular decision, it's typically May 1st. May 1st is when you have to typically go ahead and commit for four-year universities. If you're applying to a community college, you may be able to go commit or even apply into the summer before you start. So it will vary, and you have to look up every individual colleges. So one of the first things that people need to do is they do need to register with disability services if they're seeking accommodations. They do not come and ask you. One, because of the fact that you have not gone ahead necessarily and disclosed. And the other reason is that there is a change in the law that governs accommodations from high school to college, and the responsibilities rest on the student in college, not on the school system. So let me just go ahead and, in the interest of time, move forward to that and just talk a little bit, just to make people aware, as I said, that there is a difference in what governs accommodations and formal support between college and high school. High school is governed by something called IDEA, public schools. It does not apply to private schools. When you think of IEPs, if people are familiar with those come through or as a result of IDEA. Some private schools may actually have their own IEPs, but they're not actually governed by that. And then in college, it switches to the ADA, so different. And that's important to know in terms of what you are entitled to receive and how schools think about at college, what is the role, their role, and what is the role of students. So if you're seeking accommodations, typically you will need some sort of a neuropsychological testing and or psychoeducational testing, and that will depend on the disability that you are seeking accommodations for. Generally, although this varies by each school, the testing that most colleges are looking for has historically been 3 years or less, but that can be flexible. It can be 5 years. Some schools may want it sooner. It really can run the gamut, but as a general rule, people like to say to think about for 3 years. And so if you're someone in the audience now, if you're a student, if you're a family member, you may want to think about that in terms of where that timing fits in with applying to college. Most people think that the IEP, if they had one, well, that transfers directly to college. It does not. I think I've seen a stat that says 90% of people think their IEP transfers, and it does not. You actually, in most cases, do not submit your IEP. Some schools may ask for it if you have one, but you don't need to go ahead and submit for it. And I'm actually working with several students now who, one does not have an IEP and the other one has a very basic IEP, but as a result of their neuropsychological testing and a letter and filling out a documentation form from the mental health treatment provider, those individuals will be able to get more accommodations and support in college than they received in high school. So I suggest that you go to the Disability Services office and the website for any colleges you're interested in, and it should have what the documentation is that they're looking for, often by disability. So for mental health, it's usually characterized as psychological disorders or psychiatric disorders. So one of the biggest things that is a challenge is where do you find mental health support on a college campus? And just looking at how we're doing with timing here, I'm about 5 minutes behind. So I'm going to go through this a little bit quickly, and then you and I will start our conversation, okay? So one of the first places, or the first place I think that you should go ahead and talk to about mental health support in college, if you have not already done so, is to talk to your current mental health provider. What are their thoughts in terms of what would be useful for you? Is there potential for the current mental health provider to continue working with the student once they're in college? Now, this is something that I think a lot of students who, really feel they're getting a lot out of their therapy are wanting and are hoping. But there are challenges with it because of the fact that licensure for mental health providers, is typically, it's based on the state. If we have some individuals who are here today who are psychologists, if you're a psychologist and if you're familiar, or people are not, but with Psych Pact is a relationship between various states for psychologists to practice across states. Much more difficult for social workers, in my opinion. If people have experience that they want to share and post on the social wall about this, this would be great. But you cannot just assume that you can continue to work with your current mental health provider. Now, as a result of COVID, the licensure issues across states has really been relaxed because everyone's had to do teletherapy. And I know that there will be a push and there will be advocacy. Maybe NAMI Maryland or NAMI, national office will become involved in trying to go ahead and address to make teletherapy moving forward, more accessible. I do know sometimes that providers do still work individually with their clients once they may go to another state, and either perhaps that's something they're willing to do, or perhaps they may not be aware of the restrictions about practicing, across state lines. Increasingly, there's a variety of apps that people can look at. It's very easy for a lot of teenagers and young adults to just go into the app store, put in mindfulness, go ahead and put in, scheduling, put in medicine reminders, a whole bunch of stuff. Many people initially think, great, I'm going to get all the mental health support I need at a counseling center at college. And that is a really big misnomer for most colleges. Most colleges do not have the bandwidth to go ahead and provide ongoing therapy for students. Historically, most colleges are providing 5 or 6 sessions of therapy that are for very short-term individual issues. So if you are somebody who has a chronic mental illness and you need weekly support, or you're someone who has, severe mental illness, complex issues, the counseling center directly probably would not be providing the support to you in my experience, but they can be a great source for referrals for local communities. Or as a result of COVID, there's been a big push to go ahead and have colleges do more around mental health. So you're seeing colleges that are now partnering with online referral services and partnering with online telehealth services that are offered they're offered nationally, but they have providers who are licensed in the particular state where the college is. So that is something that is really important to think about. And obviously there's a lot there. And, I know I went through this quickly, and the idea was just to, give you some ideas and hopefully some tips and get people thinking about how to approach the college process. And so with that, Eli, if you want to go ahead and unmute yourself so we can see you. Eli?
Sorry, I clicked something wrong. Clicked on Google instead of.
Okay, well you're here,
Zoom.
so we have you, and we're glad you're here. Okay.
Okay.
So
where should I start?
So why don't we, Eli, just sort of go through, and have a conversation, which, it's easy, obviously, for the two of us to have a conversation. Sometimes, right, like as any family, easier than others. But why don't we talk at first about your college transition?
So
right?
First, I'd like to start off with a poem.
Oh, I forgot. You're correct, Eli. You did tell me that. So let me pull that up. And
this poem
resonated
with me, and it's very powerful. Oh. Let me read you this poem. Alice's Walk by Joanne Lindbergh. If you could feel as Alice does, how fast the earth is moving, if your bones shuddered at the grinding or thrust of it, if you sometimes had to run, keep running just to stay in place, if you feared the ground might throw you like a horse, its rider, if you knew a foot placed here or there meant life or death, then you wouldn't need to ask her why she walks that way.
Great, Eli. And so can you share, why did you choose that poem?
I chose this poem because it describes how I feel about life, and that I hope others will be more compassionate to people with mental illness and the challenges that come with them.
Great, and thank you for introducing me to that poem, because I had not seen it before. So Eli, let's just spend, I'm just looking at the time here. Let's go ahead and spend just a few minutes on your college transition. You know, as it indicated earlier, you did have, right, a very non-traditional high school experience to college, right? You had been in residential treatment programs, therapeutic boarding schools for all of high school. So when you were going on to college, what were you most excited about, and what were you most, nervous and anxious about?
I was really excited about the size of Westchester, with being 16,000 students, and how more things to do, more students, and there's definitely more things to do. More students are making a mistake, like socially, if you make a mistake, you might see them in passing, but it would be very rare to see them in passing,
Okay.
particularly with how big the ball is. It seems it's like it seems bigger than you think it is, but it's not actually that big. But at the
Right.
same time, there's
Eli,
more.
I'm
Go
sorry
on.
to interrupt you, but can you just go ahead and let people know, because you said 16,000, like how large were the schools that you were coming from?
The schools I was coming from, well, my graduate class was 9 kids, and that was 56 kids from grade 6 through 12.
Right. So you went from there to a school with 16,000 students. Okay. And that was something that you said for reasons you were excited about, but at the same time,
I was nervous also about it because I've only been to small schools.
Right.
And I was concerned about the individual academic attention, but I learned, because I come from someone who has LD issues, I wasn't concerned about living away from home, but I was concerned about the academics, and I noted and worried about like being noticed for having my issues. But I've learned how to. I still struggle with like being able to sit in front of the class, which will probably be better for me. But I'm just too nervous or anxious because I don't want to be pointed out as like someone who asks a lot of questions, even though they encourage you to ask a lot of questions, which I've learned in lecture style, so then students could, because you get higher points in discussion grading, but it's definitely nerve-wracking.
Right.
And
so Eli, is it okay, just in the interest of time, to like move
yes,
forward? Okay.
yes.
So I'm just gonna let everybody know that you started in fall 2020 when COVID was, really impacting. It still is, obviously, but schools, many of them, like your school, decided it was not going to be in person. So can you just give 20 seconds on how COVID impacted you in your first year of school?
So the school was not fully open, but I got a house in accommodations to still be on campus. Classes were definitely online, which I minus like the health classes and music classes. There's those who need more individual attention. And since I have learning differences, it was really hard for me to pass my classes, that were online. I only passed one, and I had to medically withdrawn the second semester.
But you have
But,
gone ahead,
but I have kind of had,
in the
but I'll
winter and the
explain that
summer,
later.
right?
I'll explain later. I took a summer classes able to ease my way back in, which is great, and I hope to take more classes next. Instead of going 2 classes, take 3 classes next semester.
Perfect. So yeah, Eli, you've had a lot of ups and downs, and it's really, really great to hear about the success that you have been having now, particularly this semester. So let me just go ahead and talk a little bit about, you went and had roommates, right?
Yes.
You were supposed to have your own room, and it was changed. So all of a sudden you were in a 4-bedroom apartment when you thought you only
And
had
it was really
one.
hard because I thought at first it was really hard because my roommates all knew each other from high school.
Right,
That
right,
put a different spin on things.
right.
Luckily, they would really understanding about about when I just divulged I had disabilities, but I didn't divulge immediately.
So right, Eli, so you told me you have really strong feelings about this for yourself, that
Yes,
everyone has to make their own decision, but the school
but
does not match people up. Colleges don't match people up to say, this student A has mental illness, so we're going to go ahead and match them up with a student B. So do you think that somebody should divulge their mental health challenges to roommates?
yes, but not immediately. And there's a very particular reason I have behind.
Okay,
I do not recommend in the first. There's a science that I've observed of it. I do not recommend in the first few days, and definitely not during an argument. I will
yeah,
wait until
yeah,
because
good point.
I will wait until I see what kind of people my roommates are. Because if they're an asshole or they're flaky, you don't really want to, or they just turn out to be not someone that will counter with kind of like shady. You don't really want them to be to know something they can use against you. But luckily I haven't had that experience.
Right. And Eli, I mean, I think that you are somebody, right? I mean, you wouldn't be here today, and telling your story if you were not comfortable enough. And right, and if people didn't see earlier, you've been on Capitol Hill, you've been to Annapolis, excuse me, lobbying for mental health funding. So,
So for instance, but I do predict, but the time I do say, you should say you have mental illness is and if you feel comfortable with your roommates, I've said on the way to a party in case something happens socially
that's interesting.
that you're in a way not so in case something socially happens wrong or awkward, they will have a better understanding of, hey, this is how it happened, and this may have been why it happened, and you can use them as a check-in point. So I use my because I have autism, as you guys have seen, in my in the bio, my and since I don't really understand things socially, I've used my roommates as check-ins and say, hey, is this okay?
Right. So
I don't
Eli,
have
I'm
like
just
a
going to
huge
jump
party
in.
or
I'm sorry to interrupt you, but I mean, what you're saying is super interesting, but we've been
yeah,
given
in
the
the interest of
5-minute
time.
signal. So let me just ask you a couple more questions here. And I would say, if anything could be put in some questions, Camille, that people have written so we could look at them. So, but Eli, you probably have had now 10 total roommates in 2 years, okay? So what has been your experience by divulging your mental illness? Has that been positive? Has it been challenging? What's happened?
It's been positive, surprisingly, because my experience has been good. We're really fun of basically everyone has their own issues. It's on how you deal with your issues. And you're a chill guy, Eli, so I am cool with you. And when I was responding to my told my roommates, there's some, I have OCD, or I have this issue. You gotta depend on this.
Right.
It's a way to like sort of help resolve issues
So
as well.
you're saying, correct me if I'm wrong, you opened up a conversation with your roommates who then, discussed their own mental health challenges,
Yes.
right? Which is, obviously really great, and it helps certainly address stigma. So I hope that's encouraging for people to hear. I wanted you to get that out. Just very quickly, Eli. So in terms of, you managing medication that you take, that was a very big transition, right?
Yes, it was.
And so can you just talk a little bit about the fact that, when you went from, your boarding school, the nurses gave it out, to now you're in college and you're completely in charge of your own medication. What have you done? Have you developed a backup system? And how
At first, I was very against the backup system because of my new. So like, no way, I don't need this. I have my meds. I'm confident I can do this. During the summer, and I practiced it in the summer between high school and college. Turns out I needed a backup system, and more importantly, I needed.
So what happened specifically, Eli?
I needed a backup system. I needed a pill tray for each day to
Right.
show.
So can you, I'm sorry to, I really, sorry about, jumping in here, Eli, because I'm seeing we're down to 2 minutes, but what happens in the spring semester in terms of
Spring semester, I
whether,
had to medically withdraw because my schedule was completely different from adjusting to my roommates and adjusting, and definitely those roommates were they were adjusting.
right, so you had stopped medication, right? Not intentionally, but, right?
Yeah.
Right. And so now can we talk about where you are after going through that experience and having to ultimately withdraw from the semester? So where are you at
When
now?
I withdrew from the semester, I was very stressed. But I know I needed the help, so I needed more support, so I had to accept that.
Right. And so how did you start college? Because you went back to college, right, this fall, and how did you start?
I took the summer class that eased me in. Then I took one, so I took one class over the summer, 2 classes this semester, which I'm taking 3 classes. I hope to take 3 classes next semester.
Perfect.
And some classes in the winter or
And
something.
any changes in terms of your
My mental health?
sleep habits, how you take care of
Oh yeah,
yourself?
definitely. I've learned to keep the blinds slightly open. I also learned to use alarms.
Wait, is the blinds, is that your tip on how to help get up in the morning?
Yeah, well, go to bed at a certain time.
Right.
No later than like 10 o'clock, 10, 11, unless on the weekends and you have nothing to do. Other than like if you're going to a party or whatnot, a social thing. But yeah, leave the blinds open. It helps. Besides the alarms, it helps the lines. Because when the natural sunlight comes in early, and particularly during the summer or fall months,
Right.
or whenever light comes early, you start to naturally wake up.
Okay. And so Eli, just looking at the time, any advice you have for students who are looking at college now?
Yes, take the process slow and the stress worth it in the end. College is not the be all end all, and it's part of the journey to get ahead as a person, become more of a well-rounded person. I'm learning colleges are designed as a whole, not for a specific job or trade, but for you to learn how to become a better student and grow intellectually as a learner.
All right. So Eli, I wish we had more time because, I know about, your life and all that you've accomplished. And so, super proud of you as your dad. Okay. Yeah. So, and you are an incredibly nice person. Hopefully people can see that here, just incredibly kind person. So as we end up, which mine is not going ahead, appears to be doing that. Did we end? Nope. Okay. Nope. Okay. So I do want to just go ahead and let everybody know, if you're interested, I am the co-host of a national Facebook group that is called College Resources for Students with Physical Disabilities, Mental Health Issues, and Chronic Health Conditions. So you can search that on Facebook if you're a part of that. I co-host that with 2 other consultants. And that is something fairly new, but we're getting a good following very quickly. And so you can continually get some information related to that. And again, as I'd mentioned, I will be giving a free workshop related to, understanding the costs of college and specialized costs perhaps for individuals with various disabilities and how you can go ahead and pay for those. And that is on November 11th in the evening. And you can get information at the collegefundingcoach.org, which Camille has already put in. And just lastly, if you want to reach one of us, I'm going to give you, the general email for our company. So if you want to reach me, and Eli, if you're
you can relate the questions they have to me.
Right.
I'll respond.
Right. So that's what I was thinking. Okay. And so with that, I'm going to turn it, I guess, over to you, Demetrius, to go ahead and wrap us up. And just for me, I really appreciate the opportunity to be here. And Eli, it's been a pleasure for me to do this with you.
Thank you. I just wish I had more time.
All right, Scott and Eli, thank you so much for such a great presentation. And that's all the time we have for now. So thank you all so much for joining us today. When this workshop session closes, you will be prompted to fill out a brief survey. If you would like to receive CEUs for this workshop, you must complete this survey in order to qualify. The next workshop session will begin at 3:30 p.m. promptly. Be sure to check out NAMI Land and other amazing virtual resources in our virtual exhibitor hall. Don't forget to participate in our resource scavenger hunt. If you find all the resources listed and submit your answers by the end of the conference, you'll be entered into a raffle to win a DSW messenger bag. Thank you to our sponsors, and again, for joining us. We hope you have enjoyed the rest of your conference. Have a great day. Thank you.
All right.